Welcome to another episode of the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, Mary Ann Peck, spiritual medium, author, and publisher, and joyologist, guiding you into all things life transformational. And in this series, I am interviewing our beautiful co-authors of Keys to Joyful Living. It's our podcast and a book anthology series for 2024. And I am so excited to have Elizabeth Hill with me. Welcome, Liz. And tell us a little bit about who you are and what good you bring into the world.
Yes, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I love any time I get to connect with you, Mary Ann. It's always a joy. And yeah, so what I do right now is I am a publisher of books. I'm a writing coach and author, and I help. My mission, I say, is to make the world a more loving and peaceful place, one book at a time. So I'm helping people share their stories and their experiences, because people want to have the things that they've lived through matter and have a difference. And they are able to, by sharing their stories, help other people as they go embark on whatever things that they are living through and living with. And yeah, so that's what I do in the world today.
So you actually help them develop their manuscript if they don't have one, or if they bring you a manuscript, then you help them fine tune that. Is that right?
Yes.
You want to
Yeah.
expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So where I help people is in a few different ways. So sometimes people come to me and they have an idea for a book. They really aren't really sure about how to get started with it or how to put it on paper, or they've been working on it for, sometimes people have come to me with like 5-10 years under their belts of trying to write a book and just haven't made it happen, right? So I help people in that way. And then sometimes people have written their entire book and they want to find a way to get it out into the world. And so I'm helping them with editing the book, formatting the book, designing the book, and then all the technical aspects of what needs to be done to put the book out there. And I also help people with getting ready to share their story, because a lot of times people, it can be confronting to share their story and put it out there and talk about it. And if they can't get over that hurdle, they will not be able to sell any books, because you kind of have to talk about your book to be able to sell some books that way. And that can be a transformational experience in and of itself. Yeah. So my background is, like, I didn't set out to do this initially. My background's in yoga teaching and being a social worker and working in nonprofits. And then I trained to be a coach and did a lot of mental health coaching with people primarily with anxiety and other things like that. But people that had anxiety, but we're also still juggling really important work in the world and trying to keep moving through that. And that has evolved into me becoming a publisher and an author and a writing coach, and having that be the primary way that I am helping people in the world and my full-time work. And I still use my yoga teaching experience. I still use my coaching experience. I still use all the things I learned as a social worker. Because I didn't mention this, most of the books that I do are people sharing their personal stories. Most of them are memoirs, sometimes fiction, but there's usually like a bend in it. There's like a little tilt to, from a personal experience that somebody has been through that's inspiring them to write that particular fiction book. But yeah, usually it's inspired by something they've actually lived through, and some of that can be traumatic too. So I help them through that process.
Yes, writing is definitely a very healing, therapeutic process, transformative. I mean, I know, with us both being in Unmuted Voices, last year's anthology, people just, there was more healing. There was more layers to be peeled back. And then sometimes surprised at the story they told, when they got on the podcast and realized, oh, sources want me to tell this story instead of what I thought I was going to talk about, kind of thing.
This is exactly what happened to me last year when you interviewed me for Unmuted Voices. I thought, you shared with me kind of the topic that we'd be talking about. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be talking about this. And I ended up talking about something entirely different. And that helped me with the chapter. I got to share some things that were obviously very true for me and very alive and, in the moment, but it wouldn't have occurred to me to put it in the chapter or to share it really unless I had that conversation with you to inspire that. So I'm excited for this, what we're doing right now, because I don't know what I'm going to say. Even though I have an idea of some things that I'm putting into, our chapter and our work for Keys to Joyful Living, but I also kind of feel like something might come through here that I was not anticipating, and I'm open to that too. It's kind of
That's
neat.
always a good surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Something more we get to look at, examine, and free ourselves from, maybe
Oh,
grow,
that's
and just
cool.
come back into that joyful living, because sometimes they can be triggers for us that take us out of
Mm-hmm.
our living for a little while.
For sure.
Well, Liz was my mentor in starting in publishing. So I called on her and hired her to help me publish my first book, We Are Joy, Reawaken Your Joy. And so when she found out it was going to be a series, that was my heart. She said, "Oh, well, you've got to start your own imprint." So that's how Envision Greatness Press got started. And I am so grateful to her. I got to apprentice with her the next year for a whole year and pick her brain. And she gave me jobs to do to learn so that I could expand my publishing capabilities and editing and all those fun things that go into putting the book out, our baby books out into the world, and how to write my stories and things. So I just want to thank you, Liz, for being my mentor and my coach during my publishing, getting that kicked off, and I'm still picking her brain today.
Please continue to do so. I will share. Well, I know it goes both ways. While you were officially my apprentice, I learned from you all year too. Like you are always finding out new things and so open to sharing them, and so we learned together, and that's what's so cool about. I love this work and just being alive on Earth is that there's always new things to learn, and new things to grow. And I love how you help author it. I feel just so happy that I've gotten to help you, make that possible for more people than I can help on my own, that you're able to carry that on too, and help more people get their stories out there, because the need is great, and the process of writing and sharing your story, just there's nothing like it for healing and learning more about yourself. And I love that you're doing that with people too. It's really cool.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So this is talking about keys. These keys, they're things that I felt like will unlock the joyful living that we're all looking for. So there's things that we work through, things that we, become our message. So for me, I always start with our mess is our message. And the mess that we typically work through is so dear and near to our heart that it tends to become like some of the work that we do, or primarily the work that we do, or maybe it just shines through in the work that we've chosen to do. So these keys that helped us, that we found, that brought us into joyful living. So tell us a little bit about your mess to message, and let us know what some of those keys were that were important to you.
Oh man, where do I start?
Here they come.
Whoa. Yeah, the mess. So I joke and I say, and this is really true, that I feel like I've lived like 40 different lives within my lifetime, right? Like I have had, and a lot of it has been very messy. I mean, so I mean, probably the first big transformation or change that I went through was how I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness when I was young. And then my experience of leaving that, which really made me change all of my thought patterns. I mean, everything that I believe. So I left when I was like 19 or 20 years old, and everything that I believed to be true, it was within like a course of like 2 months. It was very fast that all of a sudden I went, oh my God, this is totally not true for me, and this is not where I need to be. And so, when all of a sudden you're confronted with that and you have to just change, like, what do I believe anymore? And, that really changed the way that I operate in the world, because I do also interact with people that I know that while they might think something now or be behaving or acting in a way now, I never like put a stamp on someone as that's the way they are and that's the way they'll always be. I'm always curious to say, why do they think that way? Like, why is that what they believe? Because there's things that I really believe that now I'm like, that's ridiculous. But I really believed it. And I went around talking about like this stuff. And then it's been more like my mess has continued, and I keep writing about my mess in different anthologies on different topics. But like I've been right, like I was married for a long time, and then I got divorced, and that was a very messy process. But it helped, and during that and other times in my life, I've had things where I did things that I always judged other people for before, right? Like I judge that. I believe like, why is that person doing it? It's terrible. And then I'm in the same place, and then I do the same thing. And then I go, oh man, I'm doing the same thing that I thought was so wrong before. And so confronting those things and being honest with myself and saying, oh, there's so many times to learn and change and grow and relook at your assumptions. So a lot of my life has been pretty messy, but it's because I've been open to change, to transformation, to wanting to learn more, to be a different person, to grow as a person, to be more loving, to be more compassionate in the world, to be more understanding about people and humans and the human condition and why we make the choices that we do. And so that has made me very curious about people's experiences and stories. And I love when I'm helping them, writing or getting their story out. And sometimes people come to me and some people have a lot of experience with therapeutic work or transformational work and whatever, like a lot. And they've sometimes helping other people through that too. And I love that they can still learn things about themselves through the writing process, and that they can still get it's often forgiveness for either themselves or for someone else in their life through the writing process too, or talking about it and putting it out there. So, that's, I will say this one other thing is that a lot of my life's, I've had to work with anxiety and depression and a lot in my life. And so a lot of, I had to shift a lot of my mindset as a child and teenager. I was very dark thoughts a lot of the time, very dark thoughts, a lot of suicidal ideation thoughts, like a lot of bad stuff. And right, like really bad. And now, so I've had to do a lot of work to switch it, because it was very dark thoughts. And now my primary thoughts are more joyful thoughts, are more positive, are more hopeful, more loving. But it's taken me a long time to shift that mindset. My cat came to come visit us, so she wants to say hi. Hello. But yeah, it took a lot of that shifting. So that's part of my mess too, is just that needing to reprogram my brain. And that's a way that I help people as well.
So what were some of those things, those techniques or those methodologies, or what was some of the things that helped you do that? You don't just say, oh, I'm just going to shift it. Poof, it's shift.
Right. Right.
Well,
I know. I
I have
know.
a completion certificate up on the wall.
It is
I have
complete.
arrived.
I have arrived. Yeah.
So,
So yeah, I mean, so I'll be totally honest. Like at first, I did not know techniques that would help. So guess what I did? When my brain was dark, I tried to drink it away and crush it and like
good.
make the brain stop. Right. Like then I found yoga and I just poured
Yeah.
myself into very intense yoga for a while where you couldn't think because you were just doing, I did Ashtanga and it was Ashtanga yoga and you're just moving the body nonstop because I couldn't be still without feeling so panicky and just like a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And then that started to be a shift for me because I could get that through kind of a natural state, right? Like that I could
Right.
do a really intense yoga practice and then lay on the ground in the closing meditation, the savasana, and I would just cry. Like I would just lay there and cry for like the whole time. I can imagine the studio I first was in, and there were these big, beautiful lights that looked like moons up above, and it helped me just clear out a lot at that time. And so for me, meditation and yoga, sometimes tied with movement, not always, but sometimes tied with movement, um, have been so important to me. And meditation looked more like being in movement for a while until over time I felt more comfortable meditating with music and laying there and being still. And, I gradually was able to then do meditation with mantras and with sounds and with singing. But for me, it couldn't just be sit and be still and try to empty your brain, because when I tried to do that, the brain would just attack itself and it would not be helpful for me. But now I can do that. Now I can, and it's not because I'm like, reach this pinnacle of being able to do that. Like, oh no, it's just that that's what works for me now. Like the thing with meditation is there's different ways to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And there's none that are better than another. And you just need to try things out until you find the thing that is good for you right now. So what was good for me then was like moving nonstop. And now I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do that. But I can walk slowly. I can walk. I can listen to music. I can be in nature. I can hug a tree. I can sit and just be quiet and still and like communicate with what I call my guides that are kind of like guardian angel type people, and it feels calmer. But I couldn't do that before because it was just like if I emptied my mind, it would be filled with things that weren't helpful to me. So I had to do other stuff. So I would say that technique is probably the most important, is different types of meditation. And that's what I've taught for a lot of years too. And I'd say I only learned this maybe 5 years ago, but EFT tapping,
Yes.
I do that. It's just so helpful as well. And writing, of course, is a daily practice, a journaling practice and I've been writing since I was a little kid. I had journals, and these are things I'd write in my journal at 8 years old, like a lot about food and animals and like whatever. It's very precious. Yeah, for me, it's a lot of just writing it out, which is also physical movement. You're clearing it out of your head and your body through that. Those
Yeah,
are the
that's
things
almost a somatic
that,
practice
yeah,
just
it
in
is.
itself, because it's
Oh
physical, it's
yeah,
emotional, it's spiritual,
yeah,
it's everything working
yeah,
together. And that's,
yes,
yeah. I wondered if writing, because I know your backstory, knowing reading some of your work before,
yeah.
about writing so prolifically as a child and teenager and up, and how that writing affected you. Was that a support for you and a place to go?
Yeah, it's always been a support for me. And it's interesting because I've read through some of the things I wrote as a kid and a
Mm-hmm.
teenager. And at that time, I couldn't talk about what was like really happening always. So I wrote, when I've read the things that I've found in my house I've kept them somehow. It was amazing. I wrote a lot of short stories or fiction stories that weren't me, that weren't my story personally, but they kind of, or poetry or songs. I wrote songs when I was like 14, 15, 16, that the lyrics were more about the feelings that I had versus actually saying what was going on. Even in my journals when I was young, I think I wrote mostly about what boy I liked. That's mostly what I wrote about, but I didn't write about anything that, like, when I think back and go, oh, that was a rough thing I was going through, I'm like, why didn't I write about that when I was young? For some reason, I couldn't even admit that those things were going on, so it didn't get onto the paper. But sometimes that writing about the feelings or poetry or songs or what have you, doing that that's the therapeutic thing that can help people. It might not be that they can face what's, writing it down on paper, what's actually occurring. But so for other people, the journaling can be great, and just venting, and then ripping that paper up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had times too that what's been helpful is I've had times where I really wanted to have conversations with people and didn't feel safe having those conversations, or the person wasn't willing to talk to me, or I just couldn't get up the courage, or whatever it looks like, right? So writing a letter to someone that I know I'll never send it, and then but just writing it out, to get those feelings and thoughts out of the body, that's a practice that can be really helpful too. And then rip that baby up, burn it, get rid of it. But the process of writing it can also it has helped me forgive people that I thought were just, trash and nasty. Like something along the way of writing it made me go, oh, where do I have ownership of what I brought to this experience too? It wasn't all, they're doing. I played a part in this too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We all have our side of the street. So I just, for clarification, she mentioned EFT tapping, and that's emotional freedom technique. And it's a tapping system on meridian points around your face and down your head and on the top of your head. So if you're interested in looking, it's emotional freedom technique. You can find that. And so since we're talking about these keys, like when you get into a place where you're just not feeling it, the joy is like poof, gone, or it's starting to wane, and oh, I'm slipping down a slippery slope here, and I don't want to get so far out of alignment. So what do you do to bring yourself back into joy? What are some of those keys, those things that you use? I know there'll probably be something similar to what you talked about with, improving your message, but there might be something else that you actually have found for yourself, or maybe for clients, because they've worked for you, so now you pass them along to clients.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I do every morning, I do a 11-minute, I call it my cozy meditation. I used to call it lazy meditation, but then I thought it sounded not very nice to me. So I changed it to cozy meditation. And I literally, I'm laying in bed. It's the first time I wake up in the morning. I set my time for 11 minutes. I lay there and I just try to think nice things. And so if my brain goes off into, oh, I'm so worried about this thing I have to do later in the day, I bring it back. If if my brain goes, oh, this happened when I was, whatever, 4 months ago, I said this stupid thing to somebody, and I replay it in my brain, right? That's a thing that all the time, right? It's go, well, oh, I catch myself, my brain is going there. What do I do instead? And sometimes the thing is, and I think you've heard me say this before, it's like, this blanket is very soft. Like I literally will be like, what is the comfortable, nice thing that I can appreciate right in this moment? And so it's like, oh, this pillow's so nice under my head. The light is coming in the window. That's so pretty. My cat is so sweet, like whatever just these little creature comforts that I can tap into and go, And right now I'm okay. And right now I'm fine. And right now this is good. And right now I get to lay here and enjoy this and just replay that in my brain of present moment. What am I appreciating in this
Yeah.
moment? So
Yes. Yes.
that's a thing. And some days, I'm very tied to goal. I'm very goal oriented. So I always am like, this is the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to check this off. I'm going to do this. Like, that's just how I operate in the world. But often it can be just overwhelming. Like, and some days you're going to have days, or I have these days where it's like the things I wanted to do didn't work, or I made this mistake
Yeah.
and it's so embarrassing and it's just awful. And what I do on those days, first of all, it's usually I get to a point where I go, okay, call it. It's just a crappy day. Today's just bad. Like, there's bad stuff. It's bad. What? Just let it be bad. Like, it's not fixable. Like, sometimes you'll have a day where it's like, it's not. Like, this is terrible. And just let myself feel that. I'll write if I need to write about it and just like vent and all the stuff. And then I just do things that are comforting to me. Like,
Yes.
what's a healthy, comforting thing I can do? And it's like, I'll lay down with my blanket. I'll watch a show that I can just like immerse myself in. I'll go for a walk and look at pretty nature. Just like, what are things that I'll eat some food, eat yummy food. And I'll just say, just do the things you know to do to take care of yourself that you like and you enjoy. Right. And some days that's what it is. Sometimes that's what living joy doesn't look like. I'm on my bicycle going down the road with like flowers out of my hat. I don't know. Like, I'm not like singing a tune to the neighbors. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Joy isn't always that. Joy is
No.
also being right in the moment and just like, this is good. This life.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to also, I don't know. I have a poem that's what
Oh.
is really, I did not write this, but we have permission to read it. It's by Khalil Gibran, that is about joy and sorrow. Have you ever heard this
I
poem?
haven't. I don't
So
think so.
do we have time for me to read
Oh,
it? Because
absolutely.
it's
Go ahead.
okay. So Khalil Gibran, first of all, he wrote the book The Prophet. This is what this book is from. I have it tattooed on my back. It's my favorite. The cover of the book is
Oh.
it's my favorite book. I read this in my, I think 20s was when, at least when I remember reading this poem for the first time. And it really impacted my life. It's probably going to be about a minute for me to read this whole thing. So I'll read it.
Good. Let's go.
Then a woman.
I enjoy this. It's satisfying.
Yes. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. And so something about this, when I first read this, the idea that our joy and our sorrow are inseparable, and that whenever it helped me, because I was very sorrowful when I read this. I was very sorrowful as a person. Just most of my thoughts were very negative. And I attached this to this idea that, I'm crying about it now, like this idea that all of it is worth it. That even if you let yourself feel what you feel, in that moment, right? Like that it will be going towards something. And as I've grown as a person, right? I learned that when I was 20, right? Like it wasn't just, it's not like you hang out in sorrow and then you like just get
Right.
addicted to sorrow, right? Like it's a different, you're not staying there intentionally, but you're letting yourself feel it when it comes through. And as you know, you're not practicing sorrow or making an art of sorrow,
Yeah.
but you let yourself feel it, and just know there's trust that, like, hey, I'm here, I'm feeling this now, but it's building this appreciation, this joy, that I'll be able to experience more of it. And it's true. Like, so I've worked with people that have been through horrible things, right? I often, they get on the phone with me, they tell me their story, and I have to go lay down in bed and just cry for a while, because I'm like, oh, what people go through, what people go through. But the people that I know that are the most joyous and the most like loving are often the people somehow that have been through the hardest things, like really hard things. And but they have this appreciation for what they have. They have a greater understanding of humans and people. And so that's just really helped me to just, it's influenced how I live, um and help me in my work with other people too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to have that. I don't, in grief or sorrow or any of those kinds of emotions that are very almost disturbing. Um, we have to have that in the world to know, like the extreme of the opposite end, the joy. We
Mm-hmm.
have to see a comparison to know what we prefer. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you acknowledge that the grief is there, the feeling is there, the pain is there, but yet it's you're always asking for the improvement, and the improvement is
Mm.
eventually landing joy.
Mm.
Um, so certainly, because the mantra of the universe is more. It's
Mm.
always calling for more creation. So
Mm-hmm.
if we don't have something to compare and make decisions of choosing the new creation, that opportunity for something improvement, something better, something, and again, on the extreme of joy, at the top end of joy, um,
Mm.
there's no need for life. Eternity's
Mm-hmm.
boop, it's over. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
we're complete. So, I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a blog post not all that long ago, and it was talking about the perfection of my incompletion.
Mm.
I'll never be complete,
Mm.
because there'll always be something new that I want, as
Yeah.
I experience life, and whether it's, you know, real hard trauma, or if it's just, oh, I just don't like that thing,
Mm-hmm.
I just prefer this. So,
Yep.
I want to sit in this chair rather than that chair, whatever.
Sure.
I mean, from something as simple as that to, yeah, traumatic experiences. But there's always, and one of my authors one time, wrote a book, and it was about, finding her joy after her son um, died of an accidental
Mm.
overdose.
Mm.
Just finding joy, even in those moments. It doesn't make sense. It is not
Mm-hmm.
logical for you to have joy, but
Mm-hmm.
there's still that glimmer. You cannot stay in one emotion or one state of being 100% of the time. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
We're made to feel all the feels.
Yes, all the feels.
I mean, we don't want to unpack and move in the joy, in the sorrow, or the grief, but
Mm-hmm.
that's we have to. There's going to be moments that we experience those, and joy can still peek through. Yes, certainly, yeah.
I think so. I've had years where I was too afraid to feel sorrowful.
uh,
And so I stopped, like where I kind of shut myself down,
mhm.
whatever. And it did keep me from also experiencing
Yeah.
real joy or pleasure or happiness, because I was
Absolutely.
just like doing the thing, getting it done, moving on, handling what I have to have handled, because I just couldn't deal
Robotic.
with it.
Yeah.
Robotic. Even
Mhm.
recently, I realized I had been avoiding some music, like not really listening to some music, because I'll listen to some songs and I'll just be like falling, just like fall apart and start crying, just because it
Mhm.
makes me feel so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and I realized, I went, oh my goodness, I've been kind of shutting myself off from this. Like, I
Mhm.
picked up a guitar recently and I started playing some chords and I like just started crying. And I went, why have I been shutting myself off
Yeah.
from experiencing this? Right?
Yeah.
There's so much there's so much pleasure and joy available in certain things sometimes. So we can shut ourselves down from it out of fear of feeling everything
Absolutely.
too. That
Oh,
can come up.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, I agree. So, do you have a story about maybe a client that kind of transformed through utilizing some of the keys that you offered them?
I mean, so yeah, so I will say, I've worked with thousands of people
Yeah,
as far, yeah, yeah. So
pick one.
yeah,
You don't
pick
need
one.
a thousand.
I mean, yeah, I would say that I mean, the one that comes to mind right now is that um Iran Nazario wrote the book Rage to Peace, and this is his story about how he lived primarily in Hartford, Connecticut, and he was really abused as a child, saw a lot of violence as a child, and then became a gang member and lived a very violent life, right? And now he's a peace advocate, and this is a guy that for most of his life, violence was just prevalent in how he interacted with people, with partners, with how in the things he had to do in connection with his gang membership and affiliation and everything, and that someone like that can switch things around and become an advocate to help the community in a different way, right? And so in working with him, he had done so much work already to get to the place where he is, right? Like, he's amazing.
Mhm.
And but in it was very rewarding to help him bring this book to life and put the book out there, because he did find a lot more healing available in
Yeah.
writing it, like.
Mhm.
And also he shared with me that um, as he wrote this story, talking with other people, this is something that happens with clients sometimes, where um, the fact that they're writing a book initiates some conversations with families, friends, people that are involved, and it enriches their relationship, because they're actually like having to talk through some of the things, and they learn more things about that, and it deepens the connection with people, grows more understanding in that way. And he said it also helps him clarify his mission on the earth, to be like, oh yes, this is really like, yes, this is clear that this is what he's meant to do here. So that's been really, really rewarding. And then, I've gotten to see so many people that yoga is so helpful, right? I don't teach yoga anymore, but for years and years, being able to create a safe space for people to just sit and breathe together in community, um, being able to do that is really change. It's The world is so not that primarily, that when the more that we can connect with these spaces where we can breathe together and be peaceful together, it can make a real difference for our lives and for our greater communities too. It's cool to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Love that. Yeah, because even for me doing some ghostwriting, people may not be able to put it down on paper or type it in the
Mm,
computer,
yeah.
but just telling their story
Mm,
releases so much.
mm,
Even though I'm creating the story for them and writing it for them,
mm,
and they look it through, read it through. And so even that, just verbalizing sometimes
mm,
is of course, still healing. even if you can't put it down pencil to paper or clicking to computer. Um, if it's something that you need to get out, tell it somehow,
Yes,
tell it.
I would like to talk on this for a moment too, because it is words have so much power, both the words that we put out vocally and on page and that we read, the words that we take in and listen to and are
Yeah,
hearing. There's a
yeah,
lot of power all over the place. And um, when people are writing their story and sharing it with sometimes people I'm working with, they talk about the topic that they write about a lot. They've already done this a lot.
right, right.
Sometimes people come to me and it's actually I am the first person that they're telling something to that happened. Like this does
Mhm.
happen, right? And um, the fact that they can say it out loud to me, I feel very privileged that they feel safe
Say,
enough with me to right. It's like it's an honor to be trusted that way, and I know that they can because that's
yeah,
you know I want to be that safe space for people, and I am that. um Being able to share just even to one person, be honored and heard and believed and kind of normalized, right? Like I'm often hearing things that unfortunately I've heard from many other, not exactly the same, but people get and they share something with me and I go, yeah, this happens more than we would like to think, and I'm so sorry, and this was not right. That they went through this and all of that. So finding someone that's a safe space to tell for things to, even if it's one person, even that person doesn't go off and even if it doesn't go anywhere else, you know to find that person, that is something that can change a lot of your energy, like a lot of who you are and how you move through the earth. And that's going to help your with joyful living too, because if you can be witnessed and honored by even one person, it can just relieve that kind of heaviness that can look like weigh us down,
absolutely.
and makes it harder to tune into
Yeah,
joyful living. Yeah.
absolutely. I know because
Mm-hmm.
I dealt. I mean, I still, it's still there in certain aspects of,
Mm-hmm.
finding myself muted. That's why the
Mm-hmm.
project that we did was unmuted voices because, I've done a lot of work around it, but still I find myself still doing it, where I have to, uh, you know, speak, to be able to speak my truth in love.
Mm-hmm.
This has been so beautiful. Thank you so much, Liz, for
Yes.
spending time with us. Where can people get a hold of you?
Yes, probably the best way is the Green Heart Living website, greenheartliving.com. And you can always email me at liz@greenheartliving.com. That's the easiest way to get me.
Yes. So if you have a book being called through you, and that's how our books come, they're called through us, get a hold of Liz and see if she isn't your gal, because she was my gal and helped me get started. So be sure and connect with Liz at greenheartliving.com. And then, as always, please like, comment, and share this podcast as it helps my work go around the world. And my mission is to spread more love and joy in the world. And so I appreciate you, Liz, again for coming. Do you have any parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I would just love to say that words have power, and just, yeah, like be intentional with the words that you're bringing into your mind, that you're putting out into the world, like who you're surrounding yourself with and what. And know that you can shift that. Like that's what's cool is when if
Mhm.
you're feeling off, like you can use words to help you get into a better place,
Yeah,
and just know trust that it's worth putting the effort in, and one word at a time you can get there.
absolutely. And another thing, just real quick, we talked a lot about, tears coming and that kind of thing. Of course, I keep wiping my eyes because I'm I'm a teary person.
Me too.
But all the different times that, you allowed yourself or just laid there and tears flowed. But I love how Abraham Hicks talks about tears are always releasing resistance. So
Mhm.
that's why you always tend to feel better.
Yes.
Sure, the relief comes because you've released some of the resistance. And if it takes you years of crying, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's going to be the swing upward too after that, even though you may, tumble down the other side. That's okay.
Mm,
Okay, that's okay.
so
These here
true.
keys are always here in your little toolbox, on your keychain. Then that's why we're doing this book, Keys to Joyful Living. And if if anything of what we've talked about resonates, get a hold of Liz. If you also want to talk to me about publishing or just want to talk, I'm happy to help you. My website is www.envisiongreatness.com, and you'll find all our publishing offers there. And also, if you just want to work with me and just explore your options, because there's two publishers sitting right here.
That's
You
right.
So I love you, Liz. Thank you so
I
much.
love you too.
I appreciate you. And next time we're going to have her talk to us a little bit about why she said yes to Keys to Joyful Living. So that's going to be
Yeah.
our next podcast in a few weeks. So watch for us there. I appreciate you all. This is Keys to Joyful Living, the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. Marianne Pack, your host, and Elizabeth B. Hill of greenheartliving.com. Thank you, Liz. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.